The fear that often comes from group growth and community multiplication finds its roots in a false or really small understanding of the gospel. The church, that's us, that's people, and therefore our extended families on mission, that's what a missional community is, we exist for the sake of others to God's glory. We've been sent out with God's own Holy Spirit to be fruitful and multiply. That's exactly what Jesus said when he sent us on the only mission we have. Go and make disciples all over the world. The closeness and openness you may feel today with those currently in your group has come from trusting yourself with others, but it's the work of the gospel that has worked through your fears and the need to hide your real self. You can trust God and your ongoing redemption with new brothers and sisters too.
Welcome to the Everyday Disciple Podcast, where you'll learn how to live with greater intentionality and an integrated faith that naturally fits into every area of life. In other words, discipleship as a lifestyle. This is the stuff your parents, pastors, and seminary professors probably forgot to tell you. And now, here's your host, Caesar Kalinowski.
Hey family, how you doing today? Hope it's a great day. Hope it's a good week so far. Tina and I just got back from an amazing week of training and dreaming and planning for the future with our friends in Maryville, Missouri, C3 Church, and the full Terry tribe there. Shout out to the Black Pony Brew Pub and Eatery in town. So awesome. Thanks for the new swag. Loving it. You're going to hear more about what we did and worked on here in a minute coming up. But how you doing with being ready for Thanksgiving? Are you hearing this maybe before Thanksgiving or on Thanksgiving, or did I miss you already? I was listening to Tina and our daughter, Kristen, planning out our Team K menu and who's all coming to join the family this year, and I am excited. Nothing like a list of the people you love the most and all the food and beverages you love the most coming together. So happy Thanksgiving to you. We all have so much to be thankful and grateful for. We've been blessed to be a blessing. Think about all the things we have. If you're listening to this, you're probably in the top 2 or 5% of wealth and prosperity and choice in the world. Oh, I hope we see that and live and treat others with the same generosity that we've received from our Heavenly Dad. Now, before we get started, I've just been thinking lately, I wanted to remind you that the best resources I know for leading missional communities and making disciples and helping transition groups from small groups to missional communities, helping people develop their gospel fluency, all of that can be found at Missional Publishing. There's the Gospel Primer there and the Tangible Kingdom Primer, Justice Primer, but a whole bunch of other tools and resources as well. That's where my books live. And I just invite you to check that out. Maybe you have in the past, but you haven't thought about it in a while, or you're looking for what's that new thing we're going to do to equip our people come past the holidays soon and all. So please check out Missio Publishing. Easy to find them. They're at missiopublishing.com, M-I-S-S-I-O, missiopublishing.com. All kinds of cool stuff there. I hope you will. Now, today, we're going to talk about multiplying new missional communities. And moving a missional community toward multiplication is a lot like preparing your kids to move out of the house and start a life and families of their own. And done well, it takes a great level of intentionality on our part, and in this case with community on the leaders' parts, and it doesn't happen accidentally. There's training, equipping, resourcing, and preparations that need to happen. Many conversations to be had so the family is ready, understands what's going on and why we're changing things and sending some of our brothers and sisters out on mission. There are going to be new rhythms for some of the folks as you send them off. There are going to be new relationships formed. For some, it'll be an expansion of responsibilities as they begin to take on more leadership of others. And if not done well, or if just done as a we're splitting our group because it's just too big kind of thing, then it sounds and can feel like a negative thing to people instead of the most natural and healthy thing that can happen in a community. Healthy things grow, and good leadership prepares for and makes a way for that growth. In reality, the right time to start the preparation to multiply your missional community is when you're first starting it. Let everyone know that it's our hope and plan to multiply and extend the gospel and community and family life, let everybody know that right from the start. Now, I want you to listen to me walk through a little of how we did this together last week. It was myself with Nick and Danny, two of the leaders at C3. I just mentioned that Tina and I spent a week with this community, and we did a lot of different things. But one very important thing was we worked on the multiplication and the starting of new missional communities there. So listen in as we unpack a bit of the process we went through and the steps they're now taking as they prepare for this multiplication of their groups. And like I said, the starting of a new missional community at the same time. Okay, boys, how awesome is this to get to do this together? Are you crazy excited to be on the Everyday Disciple podcast?
Very excited. Very excited.
Yeah.
I know you're long-term listeners, and we've been obviously getting to know each other for years now in coaching and doing that stuff. But what an amazing week it's been for Tina and I to be on the ground with you guys and working on through all kinds of stuff. But today we're going to be talking, like I said in the intro here, a little specifically about multiplication and the growth of groups and all those kind of things. To set the context a little bit more for the listeners, for the folks here in the family, tell us a little bit about your church, about C3, the church you guys help lead. Give us the context and where you're at and what that's like, but also a little bit about your lives and your roles specifically, just so people know, what you're up to and the challenges you face. And I'll bet some of the folks are going to say, hey, that's a little bit like me, or we've got those people in our community too. Now, Nick, give us a little context for C3. Tell us about the church, how long you've been there, the context. You didn't plant that, right?
No.
Came in as part of the team. And
Yeah, C3 is located in Maryville, Missouri, which is a couple hours north of Kansas City, a semi-rural town. It's a college town, a place where a lot of families, and C3 reflects that pretty well. A lot of young families, a lot of really variation in the ages and stages of life at Countryside C3. We use both terms interchangeable. It's Countryside Christian Church.
And I understand some people prefer it the more longer version and not the shorthand version.
Yeah, for sure. We're trying to train ourselves to use C3 a little bit more often. But anyway, I'm 42 years old. I've been married for 20 years. My wife, Barbara, is a number one asset in ministry. She helps me with start to finish everything in ministry. She's the organizational piece that sometimes I lack. But we're leading kind of through a transition phase. We're trying to transition from a very traditional form of church that got us to where we are, and moving into looking into what's next, into what God has in store for Countryside, for the church, for the community of Maryville. So we're transitioning. We have 5 kids all the while, from ages 18 all the way down to 4 years old. And it's a blast to see what God's been doing, even in that and through that. So that's kind of our context in Maryville.
So Danny, tell me a little bit about yourself, brother.
I run the youth program at C3, and we've been trying to kind of build more of a missional focused youth program, and have been trying to have Caesar help us guide that. 27-year-old single man living in a small town, so that has its challenges.
And I'm going to say, being the first time that we've gotten to visit with other than just you guys, we've seen you guys and been able to hang out in person, but getting to hang out with the community, a huge asset you guys have, and we talked about this, is there's a lot of grace. There's a really cool spirit about the whole thing. A lot of people aren't exactly 100% sure where it's all going just yet, but they're not downtrodden, they're not beaten down, and even where maybe some of the tradition and legalisms might tend to throw a little bit of a weight, an anchor behind things, there's a real sense of grace, and that's really important, and I'm really encouraged by that as much. Now, you talked a little bit about how important the Sunday service thing still is. What can you tell us about what is the current state of group life like right now in your community?
Yeah, we've had a semi-push for pretty traditional small group forms,
mm-hmm.
and in doing that, trying to then transfer or shift the mindset into more of a mission-focused group, missional community, if you will. And so we've got probably 15 to 20% assimilation into that in a pretty noticeable way. It's not just happening by accident.
Uh-huh.
And it's starting that place where it's starting to transition more than just those small groups that are actively functioning.
Yeah.
But the state of small groups is still one foot kind of looking into the past and one foot leaning toward the future.
Yeah.
And so we feel that tension in a lot of ways with our group life.
Danny, what about with the youth and their involvement? And plus, you're also just a brother in the community, so you're involved in the community besides your role. But what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, man. A lot of the small groups that I've led in the past, Maryville's kind of a unique town that it's very based on the college. And so with that, there comes a lot of students that if I'm asked to lead a college group, the investment there only lasts for 2 to 3 years. And so you have a big transition of students coming in and getting really invested, but then shipping off. And so the small groups that I've led in the past or have been a part of have always been, okay, you're here for a couple of years. Now we're going to send you off. And it's like starting from ground zero again with those students.
And anybody doing college ministry and even like military ministry feels that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Yeah.
With the youth group aspect, I walked into a youth group that was very traditionally based and this is what you come, the old pizza and pop method of get the kids.
Pizza do, yeah.
Yeah. Get the kids here with pizza and soda and leave them on a sugar high. But
a little message and a little application at the end.
Yeah. But my vision with the youth over these past few years is to not necessarily make it that, to make it something worth going to. And with that, I've noticed that the kids who desire to be a part of that, to be a part of something a little bit deeper than just a Wednesday night where they come to have fun, the kids that want to be a part of that will be there. And the kids that don't necessarily want that or haven't gotten to the place to where they're ready for that yet will go elsewhere. And that's been a little bit hard on me to see at certain times, just kids that I've really invested into and love go somewhere else, but I got to trust that God's going to still work through them.
And what Danny's meaning by go somewhere else is that as they go a little bit deeper and more family rhythms, and they're starting to even bring a lot of gospel fluency types of learning and training at age appropriateness and all that, but into that, like you said, some of the kids just go, nah, I really do want the pizza Mountain Dew kind of ministry, and church across town's doing a big old sports night, and so I'm just going to go there. But the kids who do want that and grow that, they do embrace that, and they embrace it not just one night a week, but increasingly throughout the week as a family. Now, notice how that mirrors adult life as well.
Yeah.
I know some of you are thinking, well, that sounds like all the adults in my community. It's not that different, really. It's not that different. Just the rhythms of their life are. Yeah. So where are you guys hoping that this will go this fall and into the next year or so as far as your groups? What are you hoping is the tone of it, the multiplication, the size of it, like how many and all that? What are some of the things that, I already know a little bit because we've been here working on that, and we're going to talk through some of the steps, but what are your dreams for the future here? Like immediate and short term?
Yeah, we're fortunate to have you and Tina here with us this week. We were fortunate to do kind of a unique form of training where we asked some people what mind shifts have been made. And a better part of that group was people from our community, people from our church family. And
kind of help move the balls forward a little bit.
And to hear how many of them really latched onto the idea of a get-to life in Jesus.
Yeah, get-to instead of supposed to or should.
Yeah, that they're not doing something out of obligation. They're not doing something out of a tie to a traditional form. It's because they get to live like a family on mission with a servanthood posture.
Yeah.
And to see that, it excites me about where the groups could go. Because then I'm not pulling teeth, I'm not dragging people through anything. They
want this. They came to be equipped in it and learn a little bit more.
And so really where we get to take it from here is really start living some of those get to experiences where we have family dinner nights, where we have
open
time where we get together and just be together. It's organized, but it's still very organic and free and not just pushing them into another class or pushing them into another small group study, but truly getting to live life together. And that's very, very appealing right now to our majority of our folks after hearing what they've said and articulated to us.
Even when they're not 100% sure what that looks like yet.
Yeah.
Right? Which shows the hearts of a lot of the folks you have. They're like kind of sign me up. I think we had quite a few meetings with elders and some of the elders more than others. And one of the guys who's a really strong leader, I really appreciated the reality of his encouragement and excitement. But then he kept saying, but I'm still counting the costs. Like, can we really go all in with all this? Like my answer is yes, but I got to be honest with you, we're a little bit still counting the costs too.
Yeah. But the truth of the matter is, and what I'm excited about and where the groups and this transition could go is that we get to walk into it. We don't have to jump into a place where we're swamped our calendar with more events. We get to walk in. We get to experience the life that Jesus lived together, and that excites me probably the most. That it's not some sort of bait and switch. We're not trying to trick anybody. It's come live life with us. Come experience the life of freedom that Jesus intended for us to live. And that excites me because it's not, it kind of shifts the narrative a little bit.
It sure does. And hear that when you're transitioning or even multiplying out of groups or traditional small group people that say, yeah, we want to go missional, it's important to believe that it's not a light switch that you throw and now everybody's just busy, crazy busy. It really is a lifestyle. I have likened it before to, well, because it is a family, from the time you meet as a couple, let's say, to then start dating seriously, and then you get engaged, and then you get married, and then you have babies. I mean, those stages of life and growth and interactions and the depth of that and the cost of that and the choice of all those costs, that keeps growing and escalating, and it feels beautiful and natural. It's very much the same in this type of a family. It's not a light switch you throw, and now everybody's just like their calendar's filled up with whole brand new stuff that's hard and with people they don't know and like, and their house is, 7 nights a week they're doing dinner parties and throwing, fire pit nights and all. It is over time you're picking up these rhythms as the gospel clarifies and speaks into more and more of the areas of your life.
Another thing that has just kind of been on my heart is we have people who are ready and determined. It's just setting them up with the right things and the right process to give them something worth going towards.
Yeah, and it changes even the idea of an invitation. Traditionally in the church, we're inviting people to church, which means our gathering time, or we're inviting people to a small group. Where this is a
certain event.
It's an invitation, honestly, into access to our life, an access to myself, to my wife, Barbara, to our family, to our kids, to this beautiful community family of God that is right in front of them. And we're not only encouraging them, we're inviting them into it. And I think that just changes the whole pressure of an invitation to something, because it's an invitation into me.
Yeah, and they love you, and they want that type of access and increased proximity and life on life. Now, the trickier part is, and the growth curve is, then can we help them start to extend that same type of life to our life invitation to more and more people and people of peace, and then their extended family members and all that as well.
Yeah, and that to me, it just hammers on the importance of rhythms. That if they realize they're inviting people not to something, but they're inviting people into a community and into, we're going to spend time together.
We do all kinds of stuff because we're doing life like a family together.
It takes that pressure off of how am I going to possibly invite someone into something, when truly it's just we're together. We're family. We love each other. We spend time doing the same things.
Yeah.
And the pressure's off.
Love it. Love it. Well, we've spent the last few days digging under the hood of a lot of stuff there with C3, and you guys. It's been a blast. It's also been a lot of work, and planning out some multiplication of your current groups and the starting up of at least one new missional community. It looks like kind of heading into the new year here. This is a fairly complex situation as we looked at this. Lots of families, there's lots of people, singles, lives, different personalities involved, different gifts and maturity levels represented in the people that you're leading and that you're inviting into this lifestyle with you. Nick, what part of this process and planning that we've done has been the most challenging to you so far?
Well, from my personality wiring, I guess you could say, the thing that's most difficult for me is probably a fear of non-reciprocation. It's really fear-based. That what if I invite someone and they once again select or elect not to?
So sort of a fear of man kind of issue.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that leads me to do really kind of gross things in my own heart where I'm saying, well, they wouldn't do that. That I'm self-selecting for people and saying, nah, there's no chance that they would want to do that. And we did that today when we did some of these exercises. And that's just my heart coming out in non-gospel ways. Which
is real and fair, but articulating it is the starting point, right?
Yeah, and so then the challenge for me is to constantly check my heart and say these are children of God, dearly loved. This life that we're inviting them into is the most beautiful life they could possibly live. how low would I have to think of them to not invite them into this life?
And if they say no, or I'm not ready for that, or I'm busy this time, or whatever, it's like, well, they're still family. I'm going to treat them that way. And like, well, we got lots of stuff coming.
Yeah, it doesn't change our relationship.
Right.
It simply means that things are still working in them, and that's okay.
Right.
And I don't have to fix anything or fix anybody,
Right.
other than just invite them into this life.
I think the years and years of a Sunday primarily or Sunday only focus, and attendance being one of the giant metrics, who's in, who's out, it's driven that deep into all the stuff of our life. And even as we transition from more traditional forms to more missional, incarnational forms, we still tend to think, and even if we're not saying it, people tend to hear, you're inviting me to this program or this meeting, and it's a binary choice. Like, what night do you guys meet? Like, well, a lot of them, but like if you're referring to like our family dinner night where the community tries to never miss, we're doing that currently on, well, just say Tuesday or Sunday or whatever it would be. Oh, I can't make that. So in their mind, it was a binary choice. You're like, well, maybe that'll change and move, but we're also doing lots of stuff throughout the week. We're just saying, hey, we see you as family and we want you to increasingly choose to be in these rhythms as we grow in the gospel, walk in the ways of Jesus, and help others do that. Yeah. But we have this push-pull in our heart. And even when we wrap it in different clothing, people still hear it as this who's in, who's out, binary, yes, no, I'm in, I'm out choice. I'm not liking that, but that is hard. That lurks in our hearts a lot. Danny, and you're planning to be co-leading the startup pretty much from scratch of a new MC. You're co-leading. You're not going to be doing that alone, or at least that's the hope and the plan. What are you thinking hardest about after some of the planning we did?
Yeah, some of mine is very similar to what Nick's going through, just wrestling with my unbelief. Mm-hmm. But mine's different in the fact that I've always been one to doubt myself into stepping into new things and actually trusting God with belief that what we're doing is giving people something worth going towards. And just wrestling with the belief of this isn't a small group. This isn't just a once a week type deal. This is life on life.
We'll take summer off. We're not going to eat. Like, it's a hassle. We're going every other week now. It's like, just cancel those. If that's what's going on in your world out there, just go ahead and cancel that now.
Yeah. And as much as this excites me, I still, the whole time we were talking about it over these past few days, it's just been constantly in my head of, am I good enough to do this? Is this something worth giving our community? Is God in the end going to be glorified through this? And those are just my unbeliefs that I constantly see as a challenge of something that I'm going to have to work through with this.
And I want to just call that out of you guys and pray against all that, because this community is full of grace and they love you.
Yeah.
I'm not joking. They will follow you guys up any hill and any mountain. And you're both real winsome and fun. And I watch your life and you're all in. You're like, you see these people's family and you're giving it to them. And you're both super fluent in the gospel. So I just want to encourage you in that when that's bumping up against you, you can just label that, that's not real. And that's not how people see me. And little reminder, our actions or their choices, yes, no, indifferent, or whatever, does not equal who I am and my value or your value. So just a little reminder, a little gospel in right there.
And that reminder is going to be the thing that will take the pressure off of me. Yeah. It really is.
Yeah, and we need that for each other, and you guys will need to be doing it a lot for you and the other leaders on your team. All right, so let's walk through the process a little bit that we mapped out over specifically around this. We've talked a lot about a lot of stuff to get to this point this week, but we mapped out on a whole bunch of huge whiteboard sort of sheets, poster board things, and taped them up and all that. What are some of the issues, topics, concerns that we addressed? Just from your perspective as you remember it, I could lay it all out again, but what are some of the things that you go, this had to be addressed, and this was an issue, and concerns about matches of people and types and rhythms and socioeconomic, all that stuff? What are some of that stuff that we mapped out? I'm sure people are wanting to know so that maybe they can do some of that themselves.
Well, we're always thinking about, even though we're all one family as the church, there are still pockets of deeper levels of family. Just like your extended family, you don't go live with your aunts and uncles most of the time. Mm-hmm. But so we have to think about, and we spent a good time thinking about, and I think it was fruitful for sure, just kind of how some of those personalities would match up. And it makes it super vital to knowing your people and knowing their story, truly knowing them, not just knowing some facts about them.
Yeah. Why was that important that you're looking at that as you're considering either multiplication or the starting of new groups?
Just from the simple fact that we don't want the groups to be too heavily focused on one person or one family, too heavily focused on trying to always be fixing a problem or fixing an issue that could come up. We want to make sure that the groups are mission, discipleship focused, community, servanthood driven. And in order to do that, there's just some legwork that gets to happen that we, if we don't do that, we're not being a very good steward of what God has placed in our family. It's like letting the kids drive the car when they can't drive the car. Yeah. You don't just put a bunch of people, like you've said it a million times. You don't just put a lasso around a group of people and label it a community and no striation of tasks or understanding of people and where they are in their
gifts, leadership, equipping, all that resourced. Yeah.
And so you can't know the people in your care enough. You can't know the people that you're helping move to deeper levels of belief enough. So that was the biggest thing that we kind of wrestled around with a little bit, was knowing people's past with each other, knowing people's past areas of unbelief that are just really obvious, because we're high grace people in Maryville at C3, and we want to make sure that we don't put people in situations where they're living out of a false identity, but they're truly
or some crazy expectation that they feel you've placed on them, and they don't want to disappoint you guys in or whatever.
Yeah, the pressure is off even in forming these groups of people and trying to place them together.
Yeah, you're not going to pick it perfectly or any of that, or not everybody will say yes or step up in the ways you hope, or some people that you are going to be surprised by. I promise you, where you're like, look at them on fire. They've looped in a whole nother community's worth of people in the last month. Yeah. You're going to see that. You really will. I can see some of those people. They're just fireballs, and they're like bright lights that people are drawn to at night.
Yeah, and just making sure that people are equipped. If we're going to be leading groups, we're always thinking who's going to be going next, who's going to be then able to kind of shoulder some of this for a community of people, not just for their own biological family, but truly kind of take the mantle and carry it on, multiply it out.
Yeah. And we started out by taking like one giant whiteboard, board sheet per group that exists, and then another one for the group that Danny's thinking about leading, and on who would be in that. And we started out with like your group, you and Barbara lead. In particular, we listed out everybody who's pretty regularly in the rhythms of life and community. And then there was a second like sort of column there of like, these folks either used to be, or I know they really want to be, or could be. We are hard to say should be, but really, they really should be. They're so desirous of it, and maybe we haven't pursued them yet enough, right. Or something happened months ago or years ago and it got a little weird, or maybe they had a season of life that pulled them out of it. And so we haven't even thought about them in that way. And so was it weird for you at all, for both of you guys, and even Danny, as you were doing the same thing with maybe here's the folks that we would want to pull into a new group for me, just to like list out people's names? Does it make, some people flip out on that. They're like, but now you're making people a project, or you're making them a target. And I'm like, but when you got a family with a lot of kids and you're trying to love them all well, sometimes you got to do a little inventory. Did we get them all Christmas gifts? Do they all have shoes for school? Who ate today? Have you seen so-and-so? Did he even get up out of his room today? It's like, was it weird at all being so technical about it, where we actually listed out lots of people and families and moved people around from sheet to sheet and all that?
So I don't know if it was as weird for me as it was for you, Nick. Just in the fact that I love this process of dreaming, and it's in some of the technicality that I kind of get a little detached from, but I love doing it today. And it was kind of cool to see just ourselves identify the people in our community that we need to give more opportunities to, and we need to move into deeper levels of trusting who they are sent by God. And so that was just kind of a neat process for me, to see that like these people that I've kind of looked down on, you, Nick, have seen them in a very different light and seen the leadership qualities in them. And it's given me the confidence to trust them in the group that I'm leading, and takes the pressure off of me when that happens.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And even in a small way, just being able to bring our collective gifts as Danny and Nick and our families, our collective gifts of being able to say, well, how you think you know about that person, I've seen a different side, like you were just referencing, Danny. And it wasn't as weird as much, probably again, because I can't reiterate enough, knowing these people as people, not a name on a roll, not some guy that probably sits in the back. It's knowing these people. And so then instead of being kind of awkward or weird, it was actually super encouraging to say that they're not as far off as sometimes we convince ourselves that they might be.
Yeah, it's not a bridge too far for a lot of these folks. And boy, oh boy, we started doing some addition at the end of saying, hey, of all the folks currently involved in C3 in community life and increasingly in missional living, and then all the ones you go like, oh, they're going to be in totally. We just haven't probably extended the invitation recently enough, or maybe challenged them in this season of their life, or marriage, or parenting, or business, or whatever. And then like, oh, these people probably too. It got to be a pretty big number. And then you start thinking about plus their kids, and then maybe a little bit of extended biofamily. You're like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of fruit left on the tree. Is like winter's coming? Let's get that fruit in baskets.
And I think that was an encouraging thing to do, because if we just look at the number of people that are in a seat on a Sunday and not see them for the potential that they have of in these small groups, we just it gets so messy because we're not seeing them for who God sees them as somebody who is in that, and we just see them as this number, and we lose track of the numbers too. We don't actually see the value of the family that's there.
Well, and we tend to, as humans often, as leaders too, we tend to focus on what's not going well or who's not in the seat this week. And then we map that into community life too. Like, well, they haven't showed up for a whole bunch of Sundays, or whatever. Then we go like, well, I don't know. We were doing this, group thing, and then they disappeared for I haven't seen them in a month or whatever. And we tend to focus on what's not happening or who's not around. And part of what I think was really fun and exciting today was we kind of flipped the narrative on that. We said, well, like, who's really engaged and at what level? And like, what are some of their thoughts, gifts, abilities? What's cool about them? What's a challenge some of them have that we want to be careful not to stack too many of those same types of challenges in a community? And then we looked at like, well, who else could be involved and who, they're totally going to want to right now. And those people love those people. If they get in, they're getting in. And it really flipped it instead of what's not happening, which is so much of what happens when you're planning, or like we've been doing all kinds of stuff and looking under the hood, but it was really on the positive end. Look how many people are already engaged and can be and probably will be. And then they're going to know lots of people apiece. We're going to lead them and equip them in that. It starts all of a sudden, I'm even getting a little bit of goosebumps. It starts to feel like this thing's going to pick up some wind in the sail pretty fast here. What's coming here next year?
Yeah. And then the encouragement of, again, knowing these people and knowing if you start to see people as a project and why they're not showing up on a Sunday, for instance, if you don't know them, then you assume the worst, and it's a really sinister.
They don't love Jesus enough.
It's the way our
they don't
heart
like
works.
me. Or last time I talked to him, I don't know, there was a weird eye roll. I think he's pissed at me or what,
But then when we know them and we get to know their story and we see that they live life 6 days and 22 hours a week in community, even though we might not see them for that 2 hours that we've decided are the most important
on Sunday, yeah,
they are living the gospel life,
yeah,
in their communities, in their families, in their extended families, because we know their story and because we take time to hear their story and we take time to ask those questions, and we don't just assume anything because we're brothers and sisters, and we give them the benefit of the doubt. We give them a lot of trust and love and grace, because it's bigger than an event.
And it's bigger and deeper often than my schematic and my planning and equipping grids. Because what we have found consistently over time is sometimes we don't feel like we're seeing people, like I said, like showing up on Sunday or whatever, or like they're not as engaged in community as we'd hope they would be. But then you get to really know them and you realize, okay, they don't use the same gospel identity and 6 rhythms language and people of peace language. But then as we got to know them, they are 100% living this life out. And that's why we haven't been seen as much, because they're out discipling the crazy out of people and living as a blessing. But can we still, though, we still need them. They're not meant to be an island or lone ranger disciple makers. And if we could help them learn how to give it language to help it bring greater amount of people into what they're doing and then multiply all that. See, we're all going to be richer for it. But I love your heart there. So let's not assume a whole lot of negativity just because maybe they're not showing up at our stuff.
Yeah, and I think we're still in that old school enough thought that if we validate that in people, that you're living on mission, we see it and we love it, it goes a long way.
Yeah.
It puts wind in your sails.
Yeah.
To say, yeah, I know you've been busy a couple Sundays in a row, but I love the fact that you're discipling your neighborhood, that you've got kids in your house every night, that whatever that looks like. If we as leaders in the church validate that in people, they realize, wait a minute, something's changing.
Right.
for the better.
Yeah. The other night, Tina and I were hanging out with Jim and his wife and their group, and then they invited another group, and they said, hey, talk through the discipleship rhythms, the 6 rhythms: story, formed, eat, and bless, celebrate, all that. And as we did, you could see light bulbs going on, but there was also quite a bit of encouragement. People going like, well, we're already doing that, and we do that. And it was really a matter of, but I don't know if I do it with intentionality, or we're just, they're nice people and they love people, so it happens. But they're like, but I like this idea of bringing greater intentionality to it. But you could quickly see it wasn't like, it's not binary. Like, you're doing none of this ever, you suck, you're the worst. Or you're doing it all perfectly like I do, which is not the truth either, because none of us do. Or there is no perfect. It's life. It's what it is. All right, so let's put a little finer point on this too. Nick, what are some of the very first steps you'll be taking lead on, because it's not all on you, but what are some of the things that you come out of some of our planning meetings here? What are you taking lead on in the next, say, 6 weeks? That's going to kind of take us up through the holidays-ish. And as you grow your group and prepare to multiply, it looks like into at least one other MC, what do you feel like? What are some of your very first steps you're taking lead on?
First is to be honest with the family that we're our missional community right now, and say, we love you, but things are changing enough that we get to do more than just this, because they get very comfortable and cozy, and
we love
everybody
you and
does.
what we've been doing.
Yeah, and it's not, we're not dumping you, we're not dropping you. We're saying, look at the opportunity that's right outside our door. And so then after we have those conversations and we make sure that we're not hurting feelings and that we're not making anybody feel like they're just getting dropped, to go to that next ring of people who just need an invitation to a meal,
to the party.
Yeah. Need an invitation to our house to have a family dinner with our family, and say, we can do this consistently. We can do this regularly.
Cast a little vision, help them understand where this is going.
It's not heavy lifting. It's maybe serious conversation sometimes that you're not used to, but it's going to add life to your life. It's going to add value to your family life, your personal bio family life.
Yeah.
And it's going to just give us a more robust picture of the kingdom of God. And so those conversations get to start happening. And with excitement, not with oh, I have to go have these conversations. It's more, man, look at these people that are just primed and ready, that God's worked on, and through divine timing are at the doorstep waiting for us to open the door, because that's all it feels like.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited about having those conversations, about having those dinner times, having those. But that's my first steps, right, is get people at a table.
And I've really challenged you to, like, okay, so what days are you doing this? When are those texts going out? When are those meals happening? Like, let's really, otherwise it'll be like, well, Christmas and all that. And as I hear that too, that reminds me a little something that you were saying, Danny, earlier. Even as we were planning and processing, you hear this, you get excited, but then there's that little bit of dark part of your heart that goes, but am I up to the task, and am I good enough, or do I know what I'm doing, or will anybody of my other friends or neighbors want to do this? Guess what? Some of the folks that love you to death and you love to death, when you sort of cast this larger, increasing vision, they're going to go, yeah, and they're going to have that same heart feeling, because there's so much mystery in it, and ignorance breeds fear. Not like ignorance dumb, but ignorance like, I'm not sure what that means or looks like 100% until we've done it a little more. And that is really part of why we have to model this and take people by the hand and make sure we're living it, not just dictating it and all. Now, Danny, I'll ask you a similar question. What are some of your very first steps that you're going to be taking lead on in the next 6 weeks or so as you get ready to form this new missional community? You and another couple, it sounds like, is the hope at least. What kind of equipping do you see needed, preparation with folks so that this will go successfully?
Yeah, so I think of two things, and the first one is with my youth group. And you had a lot of conversations with me about how we get to get rid of kind of the pointless things that we're doing in youth group and center it more on a gospel-focused youth ministry, to not just be that pizza and pop thing that we're still holding on to, but getting rid of some of the junk that's still a part of that, and truly being there for a purpose. And if we want to have fun as a family, we get to.
And it's not all in one night. So if you go, well, this was a serious night and this is a silly night, and right? And
right.
There's maybe a little of both in some nights. Yeah.
But it's all just about intentionality with the family,
yeah,
and the direction that we see them moving, and growing them into deeper gospel fluency, and encouraging them with their identity, and truly allowing them to believe that. Then the second thing.
Awesome. I love that. By the way, I just want to say I love that.
The second thing with my missional community is, I don't want to say convince, but help my brother understand that this isn't just a small group that we've done in the past. This isn't something that is going to be a task. This is something that is going to be so life-giving, not only to us, but to the people that are going to be a part of our missional community. And I think that will bring life to him. But the other leader,
Mm-hmm.
it'll bring life to him, but it'll also...
We're not using his name while we record this episode of the podcast, just in case he happens to hear this episode of the podcast before Danny and him have all these cars. We're doing what? Thanks, I heard it on the air.
But then it's equipping each other for that, equipping each other that we are going to take the steps that we need to take to make sure that this isn't just another small group, but this is life on life. Yeah. This is serious, deep stuff that we get to go into this, asking our Father for trust, for guidance, for leadership, and for family.
Yeah, I love it. And one thing just in real time that I'm thinking as you're saying all that, Danny, is that between now, not just the stuff that you were just sort of describing, you and this other leadership couple are going to be needing to do and conversations you'll need to have, is there was also a pretty healthy list of other individuals and couples that you're thinking is probably a great fit and a great blend of gifting and talent and age and stage of life and maturity that in hope we're praying towards now being a part of that community. I would also want to challenge you and encourage you that between now and the official sort of start of that, or hopeful start to really pick up some new rhythms, that you ask the Lord to show you what's next with those people, so that I'm banking lots of invitation throughout the holidays now and seeing them and serving them a little extra and having a little bit extra fun and making sure you buy them really, really nice Christmas gifts.
A new car.
So that when you do start to say, hey, guess what? I've really been praying about all of this, and in just the last few weeks and months, if we've been hanging out a lot more, I want to invite you into something. So that it's not just like out of the blue, it's like bing, because that only propagates that binary choice. Out of the blue, you're like, hey, you want to commit your whole life to living in community like a family with a whole bunch of us and others? I need an answer today. That's what they hear. So as you think and prepare towards that, be banking a lot of invitations so that when you even invite them into this, that feels like a challenge. It's a challenge they can accept.
And this is the kind of thing that really excites me, because in the past, we would try banking invitation into these people's lives, but there wasn't really a purpose. We didn't have something that we were trying to move towards.
And help them move in maturity towards and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're starting up this new missional community that I've dreamed about. Nick, have dreamed about for a long time. And as we start this up, it's just so encouraging that the things that we're doing right now to set up Life on Life, the life and life that we're doing with them right now, is only banking invitation and banking trust into their life that's going to blossom when this new missional community starts. Yeah. And that is super, super encouraging and exciting for me.
It is. And let me just encourage you again, just like I was saying that some people might have been hearing those rhythms and going, hey, we're already doing a bunch of this stuff, maybe not with the same level of intentionality. The week that we've spent here with you, it's been, we had a lot of stuff we wanted to get to, and there was some official training and like a little conference and all, but it has been a pretty natural, good, fun rhythm of stuff we've done, and there's always been tons of community around. You had your birthday, and there was a whole lot of community, but there was also other people that I hadn't met from C3 and people that came in that are just friends of yours from other things, believing and not, and all that. And you guys have a very healthy rhythm of social life together, and it's very inclusive. I think you've banked a lot of invitation already, but I'm really stoked that you're excited to know that you're banking new invitation for greater challenges that lie ahead. Really, really cool. So be encouraged. You guys have a really cool community that feels very welcoming, warm, inclusive. And we've hung out with so many people. I feel like, man, can we stick around another week? It'd be awesome. Oh, well, thanks so much for being willing to lift the lid here a little bit again and unpack a little bit what you've been learning. We've been working on and learning together as the Lord leads us. We'll certainly be in prayer about all this. Don't miss that, everybody, that even though we think and we plan and strategize, it's really the Lord that sets the growth and brings all that. And I want to encourage you guys to be doing that. And even as listeners, if you've been encouraged by this and you learned something awesome, of course, and maybe it's going to help you in some of your own thinking forward and planning, but also would you be praying for Danny and Nick here and their families and all the family here at C3, that God would grant them great favor in this and continued growth. So absolutely. I hope you'll do that.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow, I love those guys. And again, what an amazing week we had together. But I'm so excited. And I think you can hear their level of excitement as well and confidence. I'm so excited for what's ahead for them and their church and the people in their missional communities and all that. And I want you to think about the importance of both celebrating all that's ahead and growth and multiplication, but it's also a time where we need to mourn a little bit together. We mourn change. That's really what mourning is. We're mourning change. And some will feel a sense of loss, just as they feel a sense of growth and purpose too. Think about when your kids grow up and move out of the house. Maybe that hasn't happened for you, but Tina and I, our kids are grown and they've all moved out and started households and families of their own. And when they were first moving out, this has been a few years ago now, we were very excited. It was exactly what we had prepared them for all their lives. And yet we were also a little bit sad. Like, we're going to miss them. We're still going to see them. We're still family. Our relationship is not going anywhere, but we won't be in exactly the same rhythms, obviously, as they now head out to start families of their own. But it's a good time, but we also mourned a little bit. It's good to discuss that in your community before, during, and after the multiplication comes. Don't just fall victim to shoulding all over people. Things like, we should be doing this. This is good for us. This is good for you. You're going to like this. Don't do that. Embrace both the excitement and, things are changing a little bit. There'll be both joy and a little missing of certain rhythms with some of your closest friends in community as they move out and start families of their own, so to speak. Keep reminding yourself and everyone else that we're not losing these relationships that we have built and that we love. We're making room for more of these types of relationships in our lives and for others to experience what we love and experience in a gospel-centered community on mission. So we're not losing anything. We're just gaining new ones, new relational depth with new people and making space for more to have the same. So let's get to the big 3 takeaways from today's topic. If nothing else, you don't want to miss these. As always, you can get a printable PDF of this week's big 3 as a free download by going to everydaydisciple.com/big3. everydaydisciple.com/big3. Now, here's the big 3 for this week. You're not going to want to miss these. Number 1, the right time to start the preparation to multiply your missional community is when you're first starting it. A missional community is not a holy huddle, renamed small group, or Bible study. Your goal is to live increasingly like a family together on mission. Let your folks know that healthy things always grow, and we're trusting God for growth and multiplication right from the start. That way you'll avoid a bait and switch type of reaction that people can have when they thought they had joined your group for life. Now, number 2, the fear that often comes from group growth and community multiplication finds its roots in a false or really small understanding of the gospel. The church, that's us, that's people, and therefore our extended families on mission, that's what a missional community is, we exist for the sake of others to God's glory. We've been sent out with God's own Holy Spirit to be fruitful and multiply. That's exactly what Jesus said when he sent us on the only mission we have. Go and make disciples all over the world. The closeness and openness you may feel today with those currently in your group has come from trusting yourself with others, but it's the work of the gospel that has worked through your fears and the need to hide your real self. You can trust God and your ongoing redemption with new brothers and sisters too. And number 3, leadership development is the tip of the spear, so to speak, when it comes to continuous growth and multiplication. Always got to keep your eye on that. Do you have a person or couple in your community that you're intentionally developing right now for the purpose of leading their own community, their own missional community in the near future? Do the other group leaders in your church have identified apprentices and a reproducible plan and resource for their equipping? I hope so. If not, that's what you got to start putting your eye to, much like we were talking about today. If you're finding your groups bursting at the seams with loads of people and or kids, it's time to up your intentionality on developing the next leaders you'll need for multiplication. Okay, I hope that's all helpful and encouraging. If you need any help with any of that, please let me know. If you'd like some coaching and systems and resources, let me know about that too. You can find out more about how to get a hold of me, set up a time to talk and all that. Go to everydaydisciple.com/coaching. And I'd just love to talk to you and see if I can help you at all. I hope you have a great week and trust God for His provision in everything that He's called you to. He's faithful. And enjoy your turkey, if I didn't miss you already, and treat everyone like part of the family this week. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for joining us today. For more information on this show and to get loads of free discipleship resources, visit everydaydisciple.com. And remember, you really can live with the spiritual freedom and relational peace that Jesus promised every day.